Hello and welcome to Just a Moment. I'm your host, Jason Mendez. You know, for a lot of us, poverty is not something that we think about on a daily basis. But we wanted to take a moment to really look at the impact of poverty across the communities that we serve. This series, we're going to speak with United Way Bay Area staff, ambassadors. We're going to speak with partners and city officials and really try and get an understanding of what poverty looks like and what we're doing to address it. Today, we're starting with basic needs. And my guests for this episode are Laura Escobar, United Way Bay Area's Vice President of Safety Net Services, and Tom Myers, Community Service Agency's Executive Director. Let's dive in. Tom, Laura, welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, Jason.
Hi. So to get started, let's talk about basic needs. It comes up a lot. We talk about it a lot in the work that we do. But what are we really saying when we say basic needs?
I think of basic needs as things you need to live, the basic necessities of life: food, housing, earning, being able to have enough to meet your needs as a living human being. So, in our social service sector, that often means food, whether it's a hot meal, whether it's a food pantry you go to get groceries to bring home and cook, or financial assistance, sometimes to be able to keep your renter, the house, the roof over your head. So I don't know, would you add to that, Tom?
I put it, that way, and very simply, basic needs is making sure people have food on the table and a roof over their head. Now, sometimes, though, that means doing more that can help them do that for themselves. Whether that goes into direct financial assistance in addition to rental assistance. Perhaps we talk about basic income, which we are running a basic income program right now. So there's all kinds of ways that you can address this, but it really does boil down to making sure that they are eating and have a safe, warm place to sleep that night.
Sure. And, you're touching on food and housing, which are both big issues in the Bay Area specifically. And I imagine those both have their own challenges. But, in the work that both of you are doing, what are you seeing as, barriers to access for those services?
I think with food, there are a lot of pantries or a lot of places in our neighborhoods for people to go to get food. But when you think about some of our neighborhoods, you'll hear the term food desert. That could be a barrier, and then of course cost is a barrier. We've all seen our grocery store trips cost more money, so I can't buy as much, or sometimes the less healthy food is the cheaper food, and so then I'm buying less healthy food. Which has other health implications and consequences. I don't know, what are you saying?
I would say that's precisely it. Barriers can be all kinds of different things, whether the barrier that you're dealing with is transportation, and you have no way to get to food that is healthy for you. The barrier could be the food desert that Laura mentioned. Barrier can be age. It takes much more effort for our seniors to get access to food than it does a younger, healthier person. So all of those things are really important to keep in mind when you're talking about barriers. But one thing that's really important for us is to make sure that we have a food center that also can be a gateway to other services. So when you come to our agency for food, it's important that you also see that you have access to 40 different services there, including the rental assistance and the financial assistance.
Yeah. I started at United Way with what's now our 211 service, and we were trained to always ask the second question. So if someone calls for housing assistance or I need help paying my PG&E bill, you better ask the second question: are you okay with food? Sometimes you just need one thing. That sometimes you do need a person who calls doesn't realize that there are different ways they can get assistance, because a senior getting help with food might mean that then they don't have to cut their medicine in half. Seniors on fixed income. So if I can refer them to Mercy Brown Bag in Oakland to get groceries twice a month, that might make the difference of being able to afford their medicine.
Absolutely. It all is kind of a system, if you will. And food is often the front door of getting into that system.
Yeah.
Sure. Sure. And, kind of going back to what you were saying, Laura, about your example about food deserts and, also Tom, about how a lot of times it's not just one thing, right? So what I wonder is what are the compound impacts of not being able to access adequate food, adequate basic needs, adequate shelter, right, for an individual or family over the next day, week, month? Like, what are those compound impacts? And how does taking care of someone's basic needs actually help them?
Well, I would say that, one of the things that is a truism that everyone who works in our line of work will tell you is it is much cheaper to prevent someone from becoming homeless than it is to help someone climb out of homelessness. And so when we are able to the compounding effects that can happen is if someone can't afford their food, the next thing you know, they may not be able to go to work, or they may get sick, or if they can't pay their rent, that can cascade into a situation where you may have someone falling into homelessness. Those kinds of compounding effects, it's almost like a domino effect. What you want to try and do, and there's been studies that have shown very clearly that if you prevent someone from falling into homelessness in the first place, the chances of them needing further social services are much less.
That's right. And so imagine you're a mom with 2 kids, or, whatever your family construct is. You're working, you might be barely scraping, but you're paying the bills. And then your mom gets sick, you get sick, kid gets sick. Now you're off work. Now you've lost those hours. And so maybe you start by cutting back food, or what if you can't pay the rent? So now, do I let myself get evicted? Then I have an eviction on my record. Then it's gonna be harder to rent again. So maybe I get that 3-day notice. I panic and I move in, I leave. And I may not be on the streets at first, but maybe I start couch surfing. So think about the compounding issues with kids in that situation. Are they going to be able to go to school, the same school? If I'm living across town with my mom or a friend, maybe I have to go to so now there's all this instability and all this, and that's hard on kids. That's trauma. So we're trying, programs that can, okay, you lost a week's wages because you had to stay home with your kid, or you had to help you got sick, whatever it is. Now, you help you stay in your place and emergency over for now, right? I mean, there's lots of people living on this paycheck to paycheck. They don't have 3 months of savings. And, our Spark Point centers are trying to help people get 3 months of savings, right? I mean, that's a lot of what that work is, but not everybody has that. So that's where folks get in trouble.
Yeah, I think that there was no better example of how things can compound like that and the dominoes can start to fall like that than the pandemic. We saw things happen during the pandemic where people's jobs evaporated like that, where we saw folks whose not just situation, but their rent was coming due, and or the kids were suddenly out of school and they needed to try and find resources for that. Yeah. That's a perfect example of how those dominoes can start to fall. Now, one thing that was really good was we had a lot of donors and a lot of governments that step up to the plate so we could start programs. We were able to more than quadruple the amount of rent relief we were putting out into the community. We were able to do direct financial assistance to clients, which is unheard of that anyone would fund direct financial assistance. We have a basic income program, as many groups around the Bay Area are doing a basic income program right now. But at some point, those resources are going to start to dwindle. Those pandemic resources are already starting to dwindle, and we're going to find ourselves with fewer tools than we had before. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the scenarios that brings to mind, particularly you were mentioning the pandemic, is people who might be on a fixed income. I would imagine that the circumstances around the pandemic would heavily impact that. Like even now, when we were coming out of the pandemic, we had high inflation. And I would think that, if you're on a fixed income, the price of food or anything that you need goes skyrocketing, then that really impacts your ability to be able to maintain your needs properly.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the fastest growing segment of people experiencing homelessness are people over 55, 60, couples, seniors, whether they're couples or singles, getting priced out of their apartment. They're on a fixed income. So it's not a one-time emergency, right? It's now a permanent change in their they can't find housing in that community, and they'd rather these people she was speaking of, so can come and get food or, go to a place and get showers, but they'd rather live in their car because they want to stay in their community. They may be able to go to somewhere else far away and afford an apartment with whatever their Social Security is, but that means they leave their church, they leave their friends, they leave their doctors, their community, their home, where they may have lived their whole life. So those folks need more of a permanent housing solution, some subsidized housing so that you can stay in their community. So that's an example of folks on fixed incomes who, they're struggling in this Bay Area housing market.
Oh, absolutely, no doubt. And I actually just wrote a letter to all of our supporters, our agency supporters, talking about this study that just came out showing that the fastest growing population demographic, if you will, falling into homelessness was seniors. And I think it's precisely that point. If you are younger and more able to, you can relocate yourself in your life and go someplace else. You may not want to, but you can. But you literally cannot if you are a senior who is dependent on those trips to the doctor and that community that can support you. You can't go reinvent your life someplace else. You just don't have the time, or you just don't have the physical ability to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the answer really can't be just go somewhere else, just move someplace else.
No, the answer shouldn't be go someplace else for anyone either.
Yeah.
I think that we know that most of the folks experiencing homelessness in the Bay Area are from the Bay Area, and we shouldn't, if someone is experiencing homelessness and can go build their life someplace else and that's their choice, then that's terrific. But we shouldn't be saying there's no room for you here in your home. We should be trying our best to make sure that we do have room for our Bay Area residents. And
that study showed that most people were from the community they were homeless in. Every point in time count, which, every one of those counts will show that the majority of folks are from the community that, we're looking at. So, yeah.
What, Laura and Tom, what is UWBA and CSA? What does that partnership look like? How are we partnering to be able to actually address some of these issues and make sure that people have adequate access to basic needs?
You want me to go?
You go.
Okay, I'll
You're
start.
the best at talking about
The historical stuff?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that CSA, Community Services Agency, where I work, we are part of something called the Emergency Assistance Network. It's a group of 7 agencies and first convened over 30 years ago by United Way, and we serve Santa Clara County. We make sure that every single zip code in Santa Clara County is covered with baseline services by organizations like ours, which means it doesn't matter whether you're living in 95030 or 94040 or any zip code in Santa Clara County, there will be an agency like mine that offers certain safety net services. Now, the nice thing too about the Emergency Assistance Network is we have a philosophy that we call no wrong door. And that means if you work in Los Altos, but you live in San Jose, but you can't get to your San Jose agency, you can come to the agency that serves Los Altos' zip codes, and you can take advantage of those services there. So it's a wonderful network. We're each independent agencies, and we all survive on our own, but we're part of the Emergency Assistance Network. And I have to give incredible credit to United Way for 30 years ago coming up with that network that we are very much a part of, because without United Way, and United Way continues to convene us now, without United Way, we probably would not have such a robust system in the South Bay.
You mentioned your policy with no wrong door, and that brings to mind something that I've heard of a lot, which is the benefit cliff.
Did you know if a person's income exceeds a certain amount and they're receiving government assistance such as health insurance, food and nutrition assistance, or even childcare, they will immediately lose these benefits? That's called the benefits cliff. And it impacts people even if they earn a single dollar over that predetermined amount, even though that increase of income isn't even enough to make up for what they're losing in basic needs assistance to help sustain their families. Crazy, right?
I wonder if we could switch a little bit and talk about that. Like, how is that impacting the work that you're doing for clients, or how is that impacting clients being able to access those services?
Yeah, in true basic needs, right? Going to a food pantry, getting a month's worth of rent really hasn't ever impacted anybody's benefits. In fact, many people who receive public CalFresh benefits are also accessing food pantries, right? They're using, again, all those tools out in the community, either from the government or, from the local church or the food bank, to help feed their family. We all know what it costs now to, feed your family in a week, and what those trips to the grocery store cost. In fact, folks just lost money. CalFresh benefits were enhanced during COVID with some of the COVID relief dollars, so people were getting more money every month for groceries. And then as of April, when the emergency declarations expired, those emergency augmentations went away. So I think people are coming to CSA even more. I mean, you can speak if you've seen a significant spike when that happened. So generally, most basic needs don't affect benefits in that way. But then I know you're working on guaranteed income. What's been the impact with that?
Yeah, with basic income, it is something that we have to take into consideration. Because our basic income is a regular monthly payment to a family, and that can't set them up. So we have to get exemptions, and we have to go through those things that we do, and we work hard to make sure that. And so our basic income program is set up where the amount is low enough, but the benefit is high enough that they are not going to be affected by the benefits cliff that can be out there, and that's been done through a lot of work from the city of Mountain View and from our agency. But I do want to also to reiterate your point that it's for the average client that comes in to see us. Not only is it not an issue, but we have regular CalFresh signups out of our food pantry on a regular basis. People can come in and get signed up for CalFresh. Yeah.
Well, I think both of you have given us a lot to think about and to digest, so I really appreciate your time and your perspective.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us, Jason.
Yeah, enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anytime. And thank you for watching. If you want to find out any more information about our programs, our services, please find us on the web, uwba.org, or on social media at UWBA area. And make sure to use the hashtag #TheWorkUWBA. We'll catch you next time.